My wife kicked me out over helping our young neighbor. So I filed for divorce, turned the spare room into my own apartment, saved her texts and camera footage, called a lawyer after she broke in, and kept the house when the marriage finally ended. Welcome back to AF Tales. Today's story is about a husband who got kicked out of his own bedroom after helping a young neighbor carry a box. As you listen, think about the moment you would have stopped calling this jealousy and started calling it control. My name is Ryan. I was 38 when this happened, and my wife Claire was 36. We had been married for years, and like a lot of couples, we had our habits, our routines, and our small unspoken rules. But one thing I never expected was to be told I could not sleep in my own bed until I apologized for something I did not do. The whole thing started over a box. Our new neighbor, Sophie, had just moved in with her boyfriend. She looked young, maybe 23, and one afternoon I saw her struggling with a large box near the sidewalk while I was taking out the trash. I walked over, helped her carry it to her door, and spent maybe 2 minutes making small talk about the area. That was it. No flirting, no lingering, no hidden meaning. Just one person helping another person with something heavy. Claire saw it from the front window. By the time I got back inside, she was already angry. She said I had been all over Sophie. She said I was showing off. She said she knew exactly what I was doing. I remember standing there in the kitchen, still holding the empty trash bag, trying to understand how helping a neighbor had turned into a crime. I explained what happened. Claire cut me off. She told me not to manipulate her. Then she said very calmly that I was on the couch until I admitted what I did and apologized. That should have been my first clue. A healthy marriage does not hand out punishments like detention slips. I was honestly too stunned to argue, so I looked at her and said, "All right." She blinked. I think she expected me to panic, beg, explain again, maybe spend the whole evening trying to win my way back into the bedroom. Instead, I said, "I'll sleep on the couch until you apologize." She stormed off and I went downstairs. Night one on the couch was terrible. Our sofa was fine for movies, not for sleep. I woke up stiff, sore, and annoyed. The next morning, Claire came downstairs while I was making coffee and asked if I was ready to apologize. I said no. She left for work angry. By the third night, I was done with the couch. We had a spare room that mostly held storage bins, a pull-out bed, and some of Claire's extra clothes. I moved in there with my pillow and blankets. It was not great, but it was better than pretending I deserved to be uncomfortable. Claire noticed right away and made a sarcastic comment about the couch being too rough for me. Then she told me again that I could come back if I apologized. I told her again that I had nothing to apologize for. Here is the part she did not expect. I stopped treating the situation like a temporary punishment and started treating it like a living arrangement. I had around $3,000 saved in my personal account. I had been planning to buy a woodworking kit, but once I realized Claire was serious about waiting me out, I changed direction. I ordered a memory foam mattress. Then I found a leather armchair online, a solid oak desk, and a used TV. I borrowed my friend Mike's van and moved everything in while Claire was at her mother's place for the afternoon. Once I started, I kept going. I bought a rug. I put up floating shelves. I added blackout curtains. I brought in a microwave, then a mini fridge, then a gaming console and a sound bar. I even bought vintage movie posters I had always wanted but never bothered to hang anywhere. By the end of the third week, that room looked less like a spare room and more like a private studio apartment. Was it petty? Yes, but there is a point where pettiness becomes self-respect wearing work boots. Claire never stepped inside. She knocked sometimes. She called me childish. She acted like I was putting on a show and that I would get tired of it. But she kept waiting for the moment I would cave, and it never came. Then one night I was gaming online with Mike when I heard her try the door. It would not open. I had installed a keypad lock earlier that week. She knocked and asked why the door was locked. I said, "Privacy." She told me to open it. I said no. That led to pounding. Then shouting through the wood. Then the usual line that I was acting crazy. I walked up to the door but kept it shut and told her plainly that she had kicked me out of our bedroom, so this was my space now. If she wanted things to go back to normal, all she had to do was admit she falsely accused me and apologize. She refused. Then she did something very Claire. She called her mother on speaker so I would hear the conversation. She told her mom I had locked myself in a room and lost my mind. Her mother, Linda, asked why I was in there to begin with. Claire hesitated and then admitted it was because I had been punished for flirting with the neighbor. Linda asked what exactly I had done. Claire finally said I had helped Sophie carry a box. There was this long pause. Then Linda said very carefully that maybe Claire should apologize. I wish I could say that ended it. It did not. It only made Claire angrier. She threatened to call a locksmith. I told her to go ahead, but I also reminded her that I owned the house too. I had already checked the law. An interior lock was legal. Once she looked that up for herself, the locksmith talk stopped. Then came the texts. She said I was insane. She said the room was for guests. She said I could not just claim a room in the house. I texted back that she had already claimed the whole bedroom and pushed me out of it, so I was simply adapting. That is the strange thing about unfair rules. The person who makes them never expects them to be followed literally. The next morning, while I was at work, she finally went into the room. I had a camera in there, legally placed, because by then I no longer trusted her around my things. I watched later as she stood in the doorway with this blank look on her face. She touched the TV. She sat in the chair. She looked at the fridge, the console, the shelves, the lighting. Then she just stood there for a while, like she was realizing the punishment she gave me had become something she could not control. When I got home that evening, she was sitting at the kitchen table, quiet, no anger, just a kind of tired disbelief. She asked how much it cost. I told her I used my own savings, not our joint money. Then she asked if I was really not going to apologize. I said no, not for something I did not do. She got up and walked away. That night she stayed in the bedroom and I stayed in my room, eating takeout and watching TV in complete peace. For the first time in weeks, I realized something uncomfortable. I felt calmer alone than I did married. At first I thought that was just because the argument was fresh, but the situation kept getting worse. Claire stopped doing my laundry. That was fine. I found a compact washer and dryer on a local listing and bought it for my room. Then she stopped cooking my portion of dinner. That was also fine. I started meal prepping on weekends, stocked the mini fridge, and added an air fryer to my setup. Then she decided we needed a house meeting. Her friend Tara came over to act as a mediator, which would have been funny if it had not been so ridiculous. They both sat me down in the living room like I was a teenager who had gotten caught sneaking out. Tara asked if I thought I had gone too far. I said I was just respecting Claire's decision to remove me from the bedroom. Tara said I had turned the spare room into a bachelor pad. I asked who exactly was using that room before me. No guests ever stayed there. Her mother refused to. Her cousin had not visited in years. It had been a storage closet with a pull-out bed. Claire said that was not the point. I told her it was exactly the point. Tara called me spiteful. I told her I was comfortable. Claire did not like that answer either. Then Claire announced she was claiming the master bathroom too and that I could use the hall bathroom from then on. I said okay. Both of them stared at me. What Claire did not know was that the hall bathroom was right by my room, and the master bathroom was only convenient if I were still sleeping in the bedroom. So I moved my things and upgraded the hall bathroom too. I replaced the shower head, bought better towels, added plants, a humidifier, and one of those fancy toilet seats people never stop talking about once they get one. In 2 days, the hall bathroom felt like a small spa. You could hear the frustration in Claire's voice when she complained about it to her sister through the wall. She had tried to take something away from me, and I had made it better. This is where many people keep hoping the pattern will break. But if every act of control is followed by a new act of control, the pattern is the point. A few days later, Claire's job switched to a hybrid schedule. She needed a home office 2 days a week. Suddenly, the room she had mocked for weeks was very important to her. She knocked on my door at 7 in the morning and said we needed to talk about the spare room. I corrected her. I said it was my room. She said she needed it as an office. I told her the bedroom was large enough for a desk if she rearranged things. She said I was being petty. Then she tried a different angle. She said she would let me back into the bedroom if I gave her the room. I said, so I would have to apologize. She said yes. I said no. 20 minutes later, I heard drilling in the living room. She set up a desk in the corner, right near the TV. I bought noise-canceling headphones and kept moving through my day. Then she crossed another line. I came home one evening and saw scratch marks around my keypad lock. I asked if she had tried to get into my room. She said it was not really my room. I asked again if she had tried to break the lock. She said she needed to inspect the house for damage. I told her that damaging the lock to check for damage was a weak excuse. She went pale for a second, and that told me more than her words did. That same night, I installed a hallway camera facing my door. It covered a common area, so it was legal, and I wanted a record of what happened next. Mike came over the following weekend to watch football in my room, and Claire lost it. She told me I could not have people in there. I asked why not. Mike had been in our house many times before. She said it was different now. Then, in a move that still amazes me, she called the police. She told them I was refusing to leave a room in her house. The officer looked exhausted before he even stepped through the door. He listened to both of us. I explained that I lived there, paid half the mortgage, and was in the room I had been forced into after my wife kicked me out of the bedroom. Claire went on about the spare room, the lock, and the apology she said I owed her. Finally, the officer asked one question. "Ma'am, does he live here?" She said yes. Then he asked if I had threatened her. She said no. He looked at both of us and said it sounded like we needed counseling, not police. Then he left. After that, Claire sent me a payment request for half the cost of the room setup, saying it was marital property. I declined it and sent one back for half the value of the bedroom furniture I had been banned from using. She declined that and sent another request for emotional distress. I sent her $1 for the box I helped Sophie carry. That was childish. I know it was. But I was tired, and sometimes humor is the only thing standing between you and total resentment. The standoff dragged on. Then Claire made the mistake that changed everything. First, she changed the Wi-Fi password. I got my own internet line installed in my room. Then she started hosting loud wine nights and friend gatherings right outside my door, like she was trying to smoke me out. I added thicker curtains, kept my soundbar low but steady, and focused on my own routines. Then one Tuesday I came home and found my door open. The lock was gone. Inside, my room had been rearranged, my console was unplugged, my mini-fridge had been turned off, food had spoiled, my bed was stripped. A note on the desk said, "Maintenance check required. Management. We own the house." There was no management. I called Claire and asked what she had done. She said the room needed inspection for damage. I said she had broken into my room, removed my lock, and interfered with my property. She told me to prove it. That was the moment everything changed for me, not because the room was ruined. It was not. I could fix a room. But because I realized I was no longer dealing with a spouse who had made a bad call. I was dealing with someone who believed she had the right to control my access to my own home, invade my space, and rewrite the facts afterward. I had been documenting everything by then. Texts where she admitted kicking me out, photos of the damaged lock, camera footage, the police report, the fake maintenance note. I stopped arguing and called a lawyer, not for divorce right away, at least not at first. I asked about legal separation and formal household boundaries. 3 days later, Claire was served papers requesting exclusive use of my room, reimbursement for damage, and a defined split of household space. She came to me in tears. She asked if I had really hired a lawyer over a lock. I told her no. I hired a lawyer over 6 weeks of manipulation that started with a false accusation and ended with her breaking into my room. That was when her story changed. Suddenly she was stressed. Work was hard. Her mother was pressuring her, She said I had abandoned her emotionally. She said she only wanted me to fight for us by apologizing, because that would have shown I cared. That line stayed with me. She wanted me to prove love by agreeing to a lie. That is not a relationship. That is submission dressed up as romance. My lawyer later told me her legal position was weak. Kicking out a spouse, damaging their property, calling the police over a domestic power struggle, and then claiming they abandoned the marriage was not the winning argument she thought it was. But Claire still kept going. She tried being sweet for a while. She wore clothes she knew I liked. She cooked elaborate dinners. She bought my favorite pastries. I thanked her when appropriate and kept living my life. I meal prepped. I gamed with Mike. I started online coding classes at night. I had stopped reacting the way she wanted, and that seemed to bother her more than anything else. Then she pulled one of the strangest stunts of the whole marriage. I came home from work and found Sophie and her boyfriend, Matt, sitting at my dining table while Claire poured wine and played the perfect hostess. She looked at me and said I should join them so we could all get to know the neighbors better. Sophie looked deeply uncomfortable. Matt looked confused. I said I already had plans and grabbed a drink from my fridge. Claire told me not to be rude. I said I was fine and headed back toward my room. Sophie stood up almost right away and said they should leave. Matt followed her out. The second the door shut, Claire turned on me and said I had embarrassed her. I told her she had embarrassed herself by inviting the very woman she accused me of flirting with, just to make some point I still did not fully understand. That dinner told me more than the accusation ever had. Jealousy was only part of it. The deeper issue was image. Claire wanted control, but she also wanted to look like the reasonable one while she exercised it. A week later, she moved out to stay with her sister Lisa. She left a note that said, "Since you want to live alone." The truth was, I did not want to live alone. I wanted my wife to admit she had been wrong. I wanted her to say helping a neighbor was not betrayal. I wanted her to say kicking me out of our room had been an overreaction. I wanted something simple and honest. Instead, she texted every few hours saying she missed me, that I was ruining everything, and that if I just said sorry, this whole thing could be over. 6 weeks earlier, I had helped carry a box. Somehow that had become the hill she wanted our marriage to die on. Then came the final stretch. Claire stayed at her sister's for 2 weeks, posting vague quotes online about self-worth and seeing people's true colors. I met with my lawyer again, got the house appraised, discussed buyout options, and started therapy. I should have started therapy years earlier. It helped me see that this was not really about one fight. It was about a pattern I had accepted in smaller forms for too long. Then one morning, Claire returned with her brother Ethan and a moving truck. No warning. No discussion. She walked in and announced she was taking her things, the bedroom furniture, and whatever else she considered hers. Ethan backed her up right away, saying I had humiliated his sister and made her feel unwanted in her own home. I asked him if she had told him why any of this started. He said yes, but the look on his face told me he had not heard the full version. Claire tried to take the living room TV. I showed her the receipt that proved I bought it before we married. Then she moved on to kitchen appliances. I told her to take half if she could figure out how to split a blender. For 3 hours they loaded boxes and argued over furniture, cookware, decorations, and anything else that could be claimed, counted, or fought over. She even tried to take my gaming chair because it had once been in the spare room. I reminded her that the spare room became my living space when she kicked me out. That ended that argument. At one point she stormed down from the attic and demanded to know why it was locked. I told her I had only padlocked my half. I had literally measured a line down the middle and divided the storage space. Her things were on one side. Mine were on the other. She called it pathetic. I told her adults do not get kicked out of bedrooms, but here we were. Then Ethan made the mistake of saying I was in his sister's house. I looked at both of them and said, "For now." Claire froze. She asked what that meant. I told her plainly that I was done. We were divorcing. The house would either be sold or bought out, and one way or another this chapter was ending. That was the first moment she truly seemed shocked. She sank down and said this was not how it was supposed to go. I asked how it was supposed to go, and in one sentence she finally told the truth. She said I was supposed to apologize, sleep on the couch for a few nights, feel guilty, come back and value her more. There it was, not truth, not repair, not understanding, submission. I told her that was not fighting for a marriage. That was manipulation. She cried. Ethan told her they should leave. She made one last attempt and said if I loved her, I would apologize so this could all end. I said if she loved me, she never would have demanded an apology for something I did not do. They left with the truck half full. 2 weeks later, divorce papers were filed. She pushed for counseling. The court-ordered mediator heard the story and more or less confirmed what everyone already knew. This marriage was over. Her lawyer eventually advised her to take my buyout offer for the house. I kept it and paid her half the equity. The last real text exchange between us said everything. She asked if this was really the end over a box. I told her it was never about the box. It was about respect, trust, and partnership. The box just exposed what was already broken. She said jealousy was normal. I told her jealousy might be normal, but her reaction was not. She said I was giving up. I told her I was moving on. Since then, the house has been quiet. Quiet in a way that feels strange at first and peaceful once you stop resisting it. Mike helped me move the bedroom furniture back into the master. I kept the other room exactly the way I built it, with the gaming setup, the desk, the chair, and the posters. The master is for sleeping. The other room is still my retreat. I started dating lightly, nothing serious, just coffee, conversation, honesty. I tell people I have baggage because pretending otherwise would be foolish. Most of them are stunned by the story. One woman laughed and said turning a spare room into a private apartment instead of apologizing was iconic. Another said I was stubborn. She was not wrong, but being stubborn once saved me from spending another 10 years apologizing for things I never did. Claire still posts online now and then about toxic relationships and red flags. She tells people I ruined the marriage over nothing, but it was not nothing. It was every time she ignored my side of things. Every time she demanded guilt where none belonged. Every time she chose power over partnership. And maybe that is the part that matters most. Sometimes a small fight is not small at all. Sometimes it is just the first time the truth stops whispering and starts speaking clearly. If there is one thing I learned, it is this. Lesson 1. If someone demands an apology before they are willing to have an honest conversation, that is not conflict resolution. That is control. Lesson 2. Jealousy is a feeling. It is not a license to punish, accuse, or rewrite reality. Lesson 3. When a partner keeps moving the line every time you adapt, the issue is not the line. The issue is the need to dominate. Lesson 4. Documentation matters when words are being twisted. Calm records can protect you better than loud arguments ever will. Lesson 5. Do not confuse keeping the peace with saving the relationship. Sometimes keeping the peace only teaches the other person that your boundaries can be ignored. Lesson 6. Never apologize for something you did not do just to make a problem disappear. Problems built on lies do not disappear. They grow. So now I will ask you the same thing I asked myself again and again through all of this. At what point would you have walked away? And if you were in my place, would you have apologized just to end the fight, or would you have held the line too?